sir. First of all, thanks for your time to talk to us.
Pleasure to be with AIPC Inspire.
Thank you, sir. We have a few questions regarding the Manipur situation, and the first one is a general one about what do you make of the whole situation? Like there's this political uproar happening, there are people suffering, and then there is a certain kind of response from the society coming in. So what do you make of the whole situation?
Well, I understand that it's a very complex situation, but nonetheless, we were witnessing a lengthy period of peace and tranquility until this entire thing was disrupted. The Meitei community, which is the majority community in the state, and which consists of people principally of the Hindu faith, though there are also Christians, they have been making a point of the fact that they're confined to 10% of the land, whereas the smaller tribal communities, the Kukis and the Nagas, are sitting on, quote, 90% of the land. On the other hand, the Kukis and the Nagas explain that 90% of their 90% is not arable land, and that the 10% with the Meiteis is all fertile land. So there is some issue there of the economic viability of their current living arrangements. Then there is the other complication that the Kukis and the Nagas have tribal status, SC/ST, whereas the Meiteis do not. They are under the general category. On top of all this, there are complications relating to, unfortunately, some communalization of politics, particularly between Hindus and Christians, further complicated by the existence of a revivalist animist movement in the Meitei community, which is called the Sanahe movement, which itself has generated some rather active groups that are armed and are pushing their points to go forward. So the whole situation is complicated. I'm not trying to minimize it. It's not a simple law and order breakdown. We witnessed, however, a situation where all of these elements have got out of control, where the violence has been unceasing for about 3 months, where 50,000 people have been displaced from their homes, either because their homes have been attacked or destroyed, or worse, where a large number, perhaps an uncounted number of rapes and other assaults on women have happened, where there has been damage to burning off and even destruction of churches, as well as desecration, with the Christian community claiming some 349 places of worship have been attacked. On top of that, there are issues involving drug smuggling, trade coming out of Manipur, where the allegations that people in positions of power have been sheltering and protecting some of the nasty elements. A very famous woman IPS officer resigned in protest from the service because she claimed that she had been prevented from following up the lead she had on this particular issue. So you've got multiple issues. On top of that, it's a sensitive border state. And to complicate matters further, the communities are also spread out in neighboring states. There are Meiteis who are living in Mizoram. There are the Mizo people are kin to the Kukis of Manipur, and of course the Nagas of Manipur are also to be found in Nagaland. So you've got a very, very complex situation. It has been kept along through a policy of accommodation. There were some Kuki insurrectionist movements which had signed a truce, a suspension of operations agreement with the government. And things were going along reasonably tranquilly and peacefully for some years now before this current eruption. Whatever may have provoked the eruption, it is a duty of the government to do everything in its power to immediately stop the bloodletting and to end the violence without fear or favor or without any bias towards any particular community. It's difficult to argue that this is what we have seen from the present government. And very many people suggest that the state government has been complicit in some of the worst atrocities. At the very least, they have condoned some kinds of behavior where they have failed to follow up in terms of necessary action on FIRs that have been filed in cases. This horrific video that came out was of an incident that had happened 2 months before the video even emerged, and an FIR had been filed and no follow-up action had been taken. So all of these things give us cause for worry about the quality of governance and the protection, or lack thereof, that the state government is giving to the ordinary citizens of Manipur. And this is why I would say that our principal focus must be on the restoration of peace and law and order, and the government has to be held accountable because they are the ones responsible for precisely that.
Thank you, sir. Related to this, two-part question actually, about the situation of about the brunt of the violence that the women are facing, which is common to conflict situations always, as people have said. But in this particular case, the fact that it went on for so long and there was no intervention made, and in relation to that, now the political whataboutery that is happening, how would you see it in the context of, you have a very long experience in international peacekeeping, you have studied those areas in detail. So how would you see the Manipur situation and the brunt of the violence that the women are facing there as different from the other incidents of violence which are being pointed out in other states? Violence against women, both are equally bad, but how would you see the former as different in terms of the kind of intervention that is required, it being a situation of an ethnic conflict happening, and the other?
So as I mentioned in the first answer, there is ethnic elements, there are religious elements, and there are these other elements of lawlessness that are unfortunately creating the problem. As far as attacks on women are concerned, I objected publicly to the whataboutery, not because in any way I want to minimize the horror of what's being done. I think it's a shame for our society when atrocities against women occur and when they go unpunished. So there's no question that it's shocking it should be dealt with. But the ruling party's whataboutery saying there have been incidents against women in other states, including opposition ruled states, is to my mind beside the point, because yes, such things may have occurred, and they may have occurred in every state in India. But normally what we expect from governments and what we have seen in these cases is immediate action, sympathy for the victims and not for the perpetrators, no protection for the perpetrators, immediate arrest, FIR, police pursuit and action. Going back to the Nirbhaya case in Delhi and the way the government behaved, to the way things are happening with other similar assaults in other states, opposition ruled states. So that we have not seen in Manipur. We have not seen sympathy with the victims, and we have not seen immediate action. Until, of course, the video came out, and then people started feeling they had to express sympathy. The second problem I have is that in focusing on one aspect, a terrible aspect, and not minimizing it anyway, one cannot overlook the other aspects in Manipur which also need to be addressed by the government. When the Prime Minister speaks about Manipur and only mentions this one incident and says he's shamed and disgusted and so on, as we all are, he avoids having to deal with the other issues that I've talked about, the ethnic violence, the communal violence, the damage to homes, the displacement of people. There is a full-fledged humanitarian crisis which the Prime Minister could have addressed and has chosen not to. So to my mind, yes, the women's issue is shocking and deserves full sympathy and attention, but at the same time, the whataboutery is a way of obscuring the government's unwillingness to address these other aspects of the problem.
Thanks. One thing which is there in the mind of all of us fellows, AIPC fellows, and also the citizens who get to know about these things, what can we do? How do you feel in such a situation where something like this is happening in one state? How do you propose AIPC fellows could help bring about peace?
Well, the first thing that we can do, and I don't mean this particularly for AIPC, but for any concerned Indian, is to help with the relief efforts. There are various respectable NGOs trying to get assistance out to people, and we can help them with donations and other contributions. The second thing we can do, of course, which we are all doing, and AIPC in particular can do, is to continue raising awareness of the problem and not let it be buried. There is a problem in our country that very often what we see occurring is that people will, how can I put it bluntly, have sensational headlines for a limited period of time, and then their interest will wane, they move on to the next thing, and then particularly in a situation like Manipur, which is affecting a relatively, by Indian standards, small number of people in a corner of the country, the risk of being forgotten is great, and I think we can ensure that the problem is not forgotten and that we insist it be dealt with. I'm pleased to say that the opposition parties have not taken the heat off the government on this issue in Parliament. There's a consistent desire to see the issue discussed, and it's been put to the top of the opposition agenda in the current monsoon session of Parliament. So I would say that's the kind of thing we can do. If AIPC wants to hold seminars, call Manipuris, ideally from both communities, plus experts, to talk about these things. Let the public and other fellows and other members of AIPC become aware and conscious of what's at stake here.
Your answer actually covers part of the last question I had in mind about the role of the opposition, the way you see it. Do you think it has done enough in terms of all the interventions, all the highlighting of the issue it has done? What do you see as the further course of action for the opposition?
Well, I don't think it could have done more, and certainly within the parliamentary system, it has attempted every tactic available to it, and now it is going to use the no confidence motion as a means of focusing a discussion on Manipur. So that is being done. I think what will happen perhaps after that discussion is for an all-party opposition delegation to go to Manipur. There's serious talk of that being considered, and that will be a good idea to show that we are serious, we're willing to put our feet where our mouth is, or where our tongues are. And finally, I think that the opposition has a duty to the nation to make sure that if the government makes certain commitments or promises during the debate of what they will do, that we must hold their feet to the fire and make sure that these things are done. It should not be enough that we have one debate in Parliament and the issue is brushed under the carpet. There must be progress, there must be action, and I think we need to do collectively, all of us, is to keep an eye on what's going on, make sure the media doesn't remove its eyes, take its eyes off the ball. And until peace has been properly restored and normal life is back. I've met many people from both sides of the ethnic divide, and it's not normal. There has been an internet shutdown for 3 months. People are not able to do everything from registering in universities, taking examinations, internet banking, credit card payments, online marketing, you name it. There are so many frustrations for ordinary citizens, irrespective of whichever community they belong to. And there are particular suffering from those who've been victimized. So I would very much want to see some genuine progress happening in this area.
Thank you so much, sir,
Thank
for
you.
taking out time in your busy schedule for this.
Pleasure, Rashi. Thank you. Thanks so much.